Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, the post-game podcast from the second to last preseason game. The Timberwolves blew out Maccabi Ra'Anana on Tuesday night with an all-reserve lineup. It was all bench guys all the time, and Luka Garza, Jase Medical, and rookie Leonard Miller all starred. We'll break down who played the best, and also in terms of the end of the roster guys that don't have a spot solidified, who made their best case for the final two-way slot and or the final standard contract spot. It's all upcoming to the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day. And a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. More great local sports coverage 24/7 for free. And you can follow on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, at Beecken, and also at Locked On T-Wolves. Don't forget the T. All right. Let's talk post-game pod here. The Timberwolves blew out Maccabi Ra'Anana in their fourth of 5 preseason games on Tuesday night at Target Center, the only preseason game at Target Center. And the Timberwolves didn't use anybody in their top probably 8 in the rotation. And maybe, Jordan McLaughlin didn't play either. And I've been saying he's the 10th or 11th guy, right? The only rotation guy that played in the game on Tuesday night was Troy Brown Jr. He played 16 minutes in the first half, did not play at all in the second half. But otherwise, it was all like deep bench guys, like number 11 on the roster on. And so we got to see long looks at 4 of the 5 starters were with the team last year. Jase Medical, Luka Garza, Wendell Moore Jr., Matt Ryan, and Troy Brown Jr. being the 5th. But the 4 bench guys are all brand new to the team and brand new to the NBA, at least in the case of, I guess Leonard Miller is the only one that's brand new to the NBA. But only 9 players played. Only one of them is going to be in a regular rotation member at the start of the season for the Wolves. And it gave us a pretty clear look at some of these deep bench reserves and what they're capable of doing. It started off really slow for the Timberwolves just in terms of game flow. I don't want to spend too long on game flow because, again, they won by 27, and how many of these guys are going to see regular rotation minutes for the Wolves? I think the more interesting story is, first of all, how do the fringe rotation guys like Luka Garza, Jase Medical, how did they fare? And then what about the guys competing for the last roster spots? Remember, the Timberwolves only officially, as far as we know, have 2 guys signed to 2-way contracts. There hasn't still been very clear reporting on this, and I need to do a little bit of digging. But we know Jalen Clark, rookie second-round pick, who's out with the Achilles injury. He's got a 2-way deal. Luka Garza has a 2-way deal. And it was reported that Matt Ryan was signing a 2-way, but then it was also reported, I think John Krasinski of The Athletic said he's competing for the final 2-way. Remember, he was on a 2-way last year. This is the first season we have 3 2-way contracts for each team. The Wolves have one kind of locked up with Jalen Clark because he's not available to play, at least for several months, because of the Achilles. So it could be Matt Ryan. And by the way, even if he is on that 2-way, it's not like the Wolves couldn't cut him and send somebody else. That's what they did last fall. Remember, they had oh my goodness. Oh, Amari Spellman, I believe, was on, or no, that was a couple years ago. Man, Amari Spellman, that was a weird pull. Who was it that was on Eric Paschall? There we go. Amari Spellman. Spellman was in the D'Angelo Russell trade. Anyway, similar players, kind of, sort of. Eric Paschall was on a 2-way last year, got cut almost immediately by the Wolves, and then they ended up bringing in Luka Garza. So you can kind of play musical chairs with those roles. It's relatively low risk to do that. There's not a whole lot of a penalty to just kind of churn guys through the 2-ways. So even if Matt Ryan has one, he doesn't have a secure roster spot. I want to talk a little more Matt Ryan later. Just in general, though, for this game, early on, the Timberwolves were very sloppy offensively, and they didn't do a great job defensively. Ra'Anana was just running pick and rolls over and over and over again. And the Timberwolves guards were actually, I thought Wendell Moore Jr. was doing okay, but they were mostly playing drop coverage early. The bigs were. And Garza was a little bit on skates at times. And like Matt Ryan wasn't great getting through screens, and Troy Brown Jr. wasn't. I mean, like he's a good defender, but he got beat a couple of times off the dribble. It was just kind of inconsistent defense, I guess would be the best way to put it, early in the game. And the offense was just simply sloppy, very, very sloppy. As the game wore on, though, that changed. And part of it was obviously, and to be clear, Maccabi Ra'Anana, like they're a pro team. They've got a couple guys with some pretty serious NBA experience. Bruno Caboclo, of course, played the NBA for a while. Dwayne Beecken played 4 seasons in the NBA, was with the Magic, I think just last year. Ashton Hagens, if that name sounds familiar, the Timberwolves signed him as an undrafted free agent in the COVID year as a two-way player. And he got into one game at the NBA level with the Wolves and then was with the G League. And I think was in the G League bubble in early 21 and ended up getting waived because he violated COVID procedures in the G League bubble. So Ashton Hagens was with the Wolves for a couple of months, and they liked him to the point that he was, this was the Gerson Rosas regime, if you will, but he was on a two-way deal with the Wolves. And then he's bounced around a little bit, been in the G League the last couple of years, and actually signed with Portland and was released just a couple of weeks ago. And now he's hooked on with Maccabi Ra'Anana. And he's kind of a defense first, pass first type point guard, a little bit like a smaller version of like an Elfrid Payton type, if you will. Not nearly as big as Elfrid Payton, but that type of a player. All defense and passing, very little scoring capability, or at least not consistent scoring capability. So there's NBA caliber, albeit fringe NBA caliber talent on this team. So the Wolves should beat them even with their bench guys, but it took a minute to really get their legs under them. And the Wolves were down by 5 at the end of the first quarter. The second quarter is when things really kind of took off, and we saw a little bit more Leonard Miller. The Wolves rebounded the ball very poorly in the first quarter. They were like a -8 or 9 on the glass at the end of the first. They finished the game a +3, and Leonard Miller was the biggest reason for that. He led them in rebounding with 15, but the second quarter is when he really started to kind of assert himself. Well, I mean, he started the game on the bench, but as we saw more Leonard Miller, we saw more rebounds for the Wolves, and they just started to compete more on the glass. I was a little surprised Luka Garza only had 4 boards in 32 minutes. He played really well otherwise, and we will talk about that. But they didn't rebound the basketball well in this game, and that was the thing that allowed Renata to hang around for the first quarter and a half or so. Beyond that, the Wolves just got out in transition and really kind of ran them to death. There was, a blip in the third quarter where things kind of stabilized a bit for Ra'Anana, and the game got a little tighter. It was hovering around double digits. But then the Wolves really pulled away in the fourth quarter as they just continue to run and run and run and play exactly how Chris Finch wants them to play. Probably my biggest takeaway on the positive side was that even with this lineup full of reserves, save for the first 10, 12 minutes of the game, the offense began to look very crisp. And that's one of the keys you're looking for here. Because if these guys want to be plug-and-play players and they want to be the 12th, 13th, 14th guy on the bench who, like, say randomly 3 guys get the flu and they're out, or somebody rolls an ankle and somebody else is in foul trouble. Like, if you want to be plug-and-play and get that opportunity, you have to be able to run Finch's sets. You have to be able to run the half-court offense. You have to be able to compete and show that you could be a plug-and-play player. And, like, Luka Garza is the best example of that. Now, obviously, he did play some actual rotation minutes at times last year and was with the team for much of the season. But no matter who was running the offense for the Wolves in this game, whether it was Troy Brown Jr., who got some point guard minutes, Wendell Moore Jr., who played a lot of it, Daishen Nix, there was chemistry. It just seemed like Garza immediately had chemistry with everybody because his feel is so good. And he was setting screens and rolling to the perfect spot. There were a couple of lobs to Josh Minott, kind of similar thing, actually. Minott's a good example of that, too, where the Wolves guards were made to look very good. And obviously they did their part too, but I thought Minott and Garza did a good job helping make them look good, being in the right place at the right time, setting good screens. And overall, the offensive ball movement was very good. And I was impressed. Again, we'll talk about Matt Ryan. I didn't think he had a great, the line looks decent. If you didn't watch the game, I didn't think he played that well, but he did move the ball well. And that's I'm sure one of the reasons Matt Ryan is still hanging around, because he understands what to do within the confines of the offense, right? You catch the ball, you swing, you pump fake, you drive, you kick, or you catch and shoot immediately. I mean, there were a couple of shots that he took that I didn't love. And again, we'll get to that. But that was a good example. Wendell Moore Jr., also, I didn't think in general he played that well, but he looked like he had good command over what to do with the ball in his hands, which is what those guys have to show if they want to get rotation minutes this season for the Wolves. Okay, a couple more overall notes, and then we'll get into some individual performances. And I want to talk about who is winning the battle for the final 2-way spot. And also remember, there is a final, the number 15 standard contract spot on the roster is still open. if the Wolves are blown away by somebody. Did anybody surprise? We haven't talked about any of the deep bench guys at all, just about the starters. Let's talk about all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Birddogs. Birddogs are stretch khaki shorts that, simply put, they make you look good. Again, stretch khaki shorts, they're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg that give you a truly sculpted look. If you just wear regular khakis, you don't know what you're missing out on. I used to, and now I wear Birddogs literally almost every single day. I will wear them on the weekends all the time. I'll wear them like on Saturday morning. I'll go to my daughter's soccer game. Then I'll go coach flag football. Then I'll run to the store. I'll come home. I literally save for a shower somewhere in the middle and then putting on a different pair of Birddogs. I'm not taking them off. Like I used to put on basketball shorts to lounge around the house, athletic shorts, mesh shorts, just because they're comfy, sometimes lounge shorts. I don't really do that anymore. I just wear Birddogs all the time. They're legitimately that comfortable, but they look good enough that you can run your errands. You can even, depending on where you work, you could probably wear them to work. Like they look like they're more formal shorts, but they fit absolutely comfortably, much better than your old stiff cotton shorts or pants. They are also, they have that anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, which is huge all the time. And also they have pants, they have joggers too. And that I just started wearing those this fall as the weather started to turn. Absolutely comfortable. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA and enter the promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. I have the free hat. I also got the free tumbler, the Yeti style tumbler. Those are fantastic. Get yourself a fantastic water bottle as well. Birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We can promise you that. All right, let's continue talking about Maccabi Ra'Anana and the post-game takeaways here. First, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, you can every single day, Monday through Friday. We'll be back on Thursday, and we still have to talk Anthony Edwards. We have not done the player preview. It's the last one to get to. So on Thursday, we'll preview Anthony Edwards' season expectations, fair expectations for Ant. And then on Friday, we have our final post-game pod of the preseason. The Wolves take on the Bulls Thursday night in Chicago, and it sounds like the rotation guys will mostly play, which seems like it's probably everybody but Jaden McDaniels. We'll see significant run before the regular season kicks off middle of next week. So that's the rest of this week. Of course, we're still daily, or we are now daily, Monday through Friday. So make sure to follow, subscribe wherever you listen or watch your podcasts. All right. So takeaways from the Maccabi Ra'Anana game. We talked about rebounding being an issue. We talked about Garza and Minott fitting their roles, and about the offense improving as the game went on. Also, I'd say the activity level improved as the game went on, and it's what you'd expect to see from a bunch of guys fighting for their NBA lives. And we did see quite a bit of that. We saw guys begin to look comfortable, or most of them took a while to get comfortable. Garza was pretty good from the jump. Minott was pretty good from the jump. Some of these guys, it took them a minute to really feel like they were with it. I'm going to, normally in a post-game pod, I don't do studs and does till the last segment of the show. I want to get there now because then that'll get us into the conversation about players who hurt or who helped or may have hurt themselves in this game, or maybe done nothing to change their status, which by definition for guys battling to make an NBA roster, that's hurting themselves if they had a neutral game. Let's start with studs. We talked a little bit about Josh Minott already. I thought he was the best player on the floor for the Wolves. I know Garza led the team in scoring, but Josh Minott, he is absolutely an NBA rotation player right now. Yes, he's raw. Yes, there were a couple silly mistakes. There were a couple of defensive help assignments that he was a step late on. He committed 5 fouls in 32 minutes. He had the ball slip out of his hands at the rim once for an easy dunk. That could happen to anybody. But he was the best player on the floor. I think just in general, the best player on the floor in this game. 23 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks for Josh Minott. 9 of 15 shooting, 5 of 6 at the line. Had the best plus minus of any of the Wolves starters at a plus 14. He missed his only 3-point attempt, and that's obviously the part of his game he's still got to work on a little bit. But I thought offensively, his feel was phenomenal. And the more I've watched him, Summer League and so far in preseason this year, I've been impressed with his handle. And that's something I wasn't expecting him to have. I thought of him more as an athletic roll big, a cutter, potentially eventually a spot-up shooter, that type of a role. But he put the ball on the deck and looked comfortable. He had a couple of nice spin moves to the cup where he got a basket just created for himself in isolation, basically. Didn't handle a whole lot of pick and roll, but in isolation, he was getting himself to the rim. And again, this would be like competition level similar to G League, right? Maybe not quite the same level of athleticism, but like this is still even though it's not an NBA team, it's still a pro basketball team. So I want to just have that proper context. Like it's not like they were playing, a D3 team, and it's also not like they were playing, I don't know, the Bucks or something, right? Like this is somewhere in the middle. It would be a very lower tier NBA team at best, and really not even to that talent level. But Minott putting the ball on the floor, I thought his handle, he looked more comfortable than some of the other guys on the team that you'd expect to, be able to put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. Minott looked the part. I think now, if and when he eventually gets rotation minutes for Chris Finch at the NBA level this season, he's not going to be in a position where he's a high usage offensive player, but that at least shows progress, improvement, growth as a player. It shows an improved ceiling. Like even if it's not this year, this could be a few, this is several steps down the road, but say Cat gets traded next summer and Josh Minott, he has the ability to turn into a starting power forward at the NBA level. And in that case, he's going to have to do a little bit more offensively than what his role would be this year, which is the 9th, 10th guy, come in, bring energy off the bench, defend, block some shots, get out in transition, get some dunks, alley-oops, whatever, play in the dunker spot, set screens and roll, all that stuff. That role is going to have to expand in the future if he's going to reach his ceiling. And this showed that he continues to add to his game, which sounds silly because he's in year 2 and he's like not 21 yet, I don't think. But I was very impressed. I thought his all-around game was really, really good. He showed great feel. We know he's got great athleticism. The length really plays. This is a really, really good game for Josh Minott. And, I've done whole shows about what I think his future could be. The steal, the block rates, the rebound rates, all that stuff's off the charts. And the physical profile's off the charts. The only thing he's really missing is to prove he can score off the dribble, which he did in this game, and to solidify that three-point shot and also be a little more consistent defensively. But the tools are all there, and the feel is really close. Like it was really impressive. Luka Garza would be the other clear stud in this game. Garza had 30 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block in this game. He did have 3 turnovers, and the 4 rebounds are low for a guy who started at center and played 32 minutes, and low for him, right? Because his thing last year was he was just hoovering up rebounds when he got into the game for short minutes at the NBA level. He shot 9 of 15, 10 of 12 on free throws, and 2 of 5 outside the arc. I mentioned this earlier. Really good feel, was in the right place at the right time. Such a good roller, makes himself available at the rim, and gets layups. Just a solid Luka Garza game. We know he can dominate inferior competition. We saw him completely destroy the G League last year and look very comfortable in limited NBA minutes. I'm still dubious on what he's able to do defensively. I still think he's a fringe player, but when he gets minutes, in short minutes, he can make an impact. And I would not be surprised if the Wolves elevated him to that 15th roster spot, and they wouldn't do it necessarily in the next couple of days. But don't be shocked. And this bleeds a little bit into the next point I want to make after we get through studs and duds. But don't be shocked if he finds himself on a regular contract and the Wolves backfill that two-way with somebody else that's in camp with them. All right, another stud, Leonard Miller, the rookie. Very fun to watch. 22 points, 15 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, only 1 turnover. He had 8 offensive rebounds, by the way. 10 of 14 shooting, 1 of 3 on threes. I could have sworn he made 2 threes. 1 of 3 on threes, 1 of 2 at the free throw line. And activity. If I had to describe, maybe I'll start doing that. One word for every player's performance. Activity would be Leonard Miller's in this game. Very comfortable, knows who he is, but we know he's essentially a point forward who has a shot to play small ball center in the NBA, right? Like he has the full skill set, could do everything, and was comfortable putting the ball on the deck, was comfortable rolling to the basket, was very comfortable on the offensive glass, was pretty good defensively. He can still work on defending in space a little bit, but was aggressive. Again, activity would be the buzzword for him. He's also he's a lot like Josh Minott, just with a little bit more in terms of ball skills and a little bit less length/size. And I don't think his athleticism pops quite as much, but there's some similarities in their profiles. It's not a mistake that this regime has acquired both of these players. I like Leonard Miller's future quite a bit. All right. Next, I want to hit on duds, and then I want to talk about kind of that end of the roster battle. So we'll get to that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. It's the absolute perfect time. We're in the middle of football season. This is like one of the best sports months of the year. I would say October and March are my two favorite sports months. You get the start of NBA season, you get the meat of the football season, you get playoff baseball, the start of the hockey season. College basketball starts here in just a couple of weeks too. It's all happening right now. Now's the time to get over to FanDuel. Go look at that win total for the Wolves. I think it's still 44.5 at FanDuel. Take the over on that for sure. There's some other ones in there that I'm going to give a couple recommendations on before the season starts here that I would look at FanDuel. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, let's put a bow on the fourth preseason game for the Wolves and the blowout win over Maccabi Ra'Anana by talking about duds and then the battle for the last roster spot. For me, Matt Ryan was a dud in this game. I know the line looks okay. 12 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal. 4 of 9 shooting, fine. I mean, they were all threes. That was the one step in the right direction for him. The last game that I'll say lampooned him. I was pretty rough. He shot too many twos. His ticket to being on a roster is not shooting twos, it's shooting threes. He did that in this game. That was good. 4 of 9. Obviously, you can live with that number, but he had a couple of wide open ones he just missed. There were a couple shot selection wise that weren't great, where he took a dribble and backpedaled to get to a 3. I talked earlier about the ball movement, 5 assists to no turnovers. Great. I still don't know. It felt like he was hunting a shot to get into a rhythm early and then eventually did. But I feel like this every time he's on the floor. And I still don't know what his actual NBA, what value he provides if he's not shooting threes at a 43% clip, which is a crazy high number. But there is no other value. The 7 rebounds for him is an anomaly. We already know he's got one of the lowest rebound rates in the league in the season plus of his career. He, the 5 assists, that was more just a function of good ball movement and good feel. And again, that's one of the reasons he's still on the team is he's got good feel in general. I just he gets beat defensively. Again, the fact that he was second on the team in rebounding is strange. I just don't know that he did anything to help his case, which is why he's a dud here. And maybe that's a little unfair, but there's a list of guys that I'll get to in a second that I'd rather have on a 2-way contract than Matt Ryan. He's just got to show more consistency from outside the arc. And this was maybe a step in the right direction. We'll see how he plays against the Bulls. I'm sure he'll get some more run, maybe towards the end of that game, because the Wolves have some decisions to make here. My other dud for this game, again, a little bit of a stretch because I'm trying to come up with a couple, but Wendell Moore Jr., mostly just because this was a neutral performance. He didn't show out at all in this game, and he was given the keys to the offense to start. And then once Troy Brown Jr. didn't play in the third quarter, this was Wendell Moore Jr.'s offense. I guess Daishen Nix started the third quarter for the Wolves, so he was playing a little bit more point. But Moore is he's supposed to be, the Wolves are giving him the opportunity to be that third point guard, to beat out Jordan McLaughlin. They're giving him the opportunity to show that he can have, maybe fill in that what's currently the Shake Milton role. Last year's the Jalen Noel role. Can he do that? He's got to shoot threes better. I just don't have confidence when he lets it fly from outside the arc. I know he shot the ball really well at Duke. I know he was 50% catch and shoot 3-pointers at Duke. We just have to see more consistency from him. 7 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. The 4 assists to no turnovers is great. He was 3 of 8 shooting, 1 of 4 outside the arc. Did not get to the line at all in 29 minutes. Was one of 3 Wolves starters. One of only 2 Wolves starters to have a negative plus minus in this game. One of only 2 of the 9 Wolves players to have a negative plus minus in a game the Wolves won by 27. So a spotty performance from Wendell Moore Jr., which brings me to my who helped or hurt themselves the most for the final roster spot. I think we haven't talked at all about some of these bench guys. We talked about Leonard Miller. Daishen Nix was very impressive in this game. If you go back and listen a couple of weeks ago when they signed him to a camp deal, I was not all that enthused with Daishen Nix's signing. I don't think he has enough true NBA skills. I think he's more of a well-rounded type guy. But there's nothing that's oh, yeah, we can put this guy in a game and he can give us X. He can give us rebounding. He can give us shooting. He's just more well-rounded. And there's some he's had some opportunities with the Rockets last couple of years and just has been inefficient for the most part. He had 19 points on 11 shots, 5 of 6 outside the arc. That's efficient in this game. 10 assists to only 1 turnover. He was very good. Tyrese Martin impressed me. I was also less excited about his signing, and he had 7 points, 4 assists. It showed a lot. I thought he was very active. He was good defensively. I was impressed with his feel. Trevor Keels is the one whose line maybe pops the least, but I really, really like Trevor Keels. He's a good defender, and I would say he has all of that same feel that I mentioned for Tyrese Martin. Knows where to be and when. Very good positioning. Moves the ball in offense. Gets out in transition. Yeah, he shot just 2 of 7, 1 of 4 outside the arc. 5 points, 4 assists, a couple of steals. But he also, by the way, had a plus 38 plus minus. Doesn't matter. It's preseason basketball against Israeli team, and no starters played. I get it. Individual player, single game plus minus does not matter. But if it did, he is a plus 38 of anybody that was on the floor in this game. I like Trevor Keels. What I would look at doing is I would consider giving Garza that 15th spot and giving Trevor Keels his 2-way. And then with the third one, fine, keep Matt Ryan or keep Daisha Nix as another point guard option or Tyrese Martin. Or if you keep Garza in your 2-way, I would keep Trevor Keels over Matt Ryan. I think Trevor Keels is just a well-rounded player who has defensive chops and basically could give you, like, say what Jalen Clark could, were Jalen Clark to be healthy, which is, hey, we're down a couple guys tonight. It's a back-to-back. We need somebody to come in and lock someone down. Let's give the keys to Trevor Keels on defense, and he could do that. And he can knock down an open 3. He's a little bit of upside there, but it's really more about, can you come in and just be effective in your role? And I think Trevor Keels can. I haven't seen that from Matt Ryan. I'm not confident in Daisha Nix, Tyrese Martin as much. Trevor Keels, to me, showed what he needed to show in this game and has a shot at making the team in one capacity or another. Now, most of these guys signed Exhibit 10 deals, so if they're not on the Wolves, they're not on the Timberwolves, they're likely on the Iowa Wolves of the G League because of the Exhibit 10. They get a signing bonus or basically a stay bonus if they're on the G League team for 30 days or 60 days. I think it's 30 days. No, I think it's 60 days. They get like $60K or $70K for staying there. So very likely we'll see many of them in Iowa. But I thought in general, the players that helped themselves the most were Minott and Garza making a case for, well, in Minott's case, rotation minutes. In Garza's case, maybe a full contract. Leonard Miller making his case for rotation minutes. Daisha Nix making a case for a 2-way spot or that last roster spot. And then arguably both Martin and Keels made a decent case as well. Moore was a very neutral game, and Matt Ryan was a neutral to bad game in terms of looking for rotation minutes, or in Ryan's case, holding on to a roster spot. One more preseason game left. It's Thursday night against the Bulls. We'll do a post-game pod Friday. Chris Finch did say the starters would play a lot more minutes as it's the final tune-up before the regular season starts. So we'll, of course, dig into that on Friday's show. And then Thursday, we'll do the Anthony Edwards season preview. Next week, we'll get into predictions. And then it happens for real. Games actually start middle of next week. All right, that's all we have for today here on the show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find this one. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Of course, you could, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.